Hello, press fans out there in podcast land. This is Jake Menez coming to you from the heart of downtown Brentwood at Altman Studios for Clocked In with the Press, our weekly podcast. In this podcast, we highlight news stories, individuals, and organizations that deserve your attention. For full news stories and the latest Contra Costa County updates, you can visit our website and Facebook at thepress.net or our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. This is Jake Menez, clocking in. So for today's episode, we are here with some youth writers from Antioch High School, as well as their teacher, Pam Swicegood, to talk about their recent publication of Pantheon magazine. Pam, do you want to tell us a little bit about...
Sure. First of all, we're really glad to be here. Thank you for having us. Yes, I'm the advisor for the Pantheon. It's Antioch High School's literary magazine. It's something that I started back in 1991, and it has been produced once a year, nearly every year since then, and it's a product of my creative writing class, but we also welcome submissions from throughout the school, and it's poems, stories, black and white photography, and black and white artwork submitted by Antioch High School students throughout the school year.
Okay, perfect. So the magazine then is entirely internal. Everybody published in it is from Antioch High, is that correct?
Absolutely. All grades 9 through 12, but only Antioch High School students.
Okay, perfect. You said you've been doing it since 91, so it's 31 years for anybody at home who doesn't want to do the math. And
Yes,
with us
it
today,
is.
we have 4 of your students. This is a little bit different for us. Normally we do maybe 1 or 2 guests, so we're going to start with the first 2 students here, if you want to introduce yourselves.
My name's Lydia.
Hi, my name is Morgan.
And how are you 2 doing today?
We're doing fine. How are you?
I'm very good. Is this your first podcast that you've been on?
Yes, and I'm excited.
Okay, and great to hear it.
Yeah, besides my own for class.
Before class, you said.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I'm curious about that
Okay.
before we get into the creative writing.
It's just for web and social media design. He wants us to all work in a group and make our own podcast, and we can talk about anything that we want to. It just has to be at least 10 minutes long and like 6 episodes.
And what's your podcast about?
It's pretty random, just whatever we feel like talking about that day. It's more laughing than talking, if I'm being honest.
If we're doing well here, I'm hoping this turns out to be the same thing. So what that means, though, is you're kind of creative just in a lot of different endeavors, not just in your writing. So how did either of you end up in this creative writing class to begin with? What prompted you to want to join it?
Okay, well, I first joined the creative writing class in my sophomore year on accident, actually. I wanted to be in a U.S. government class with another teacher in a different academy because our schools has, certain academies. So I guess I had like a blank in my schedule or whatever. And so they said, well, since you like writing, why don't you be in creative writing? And so I was like, it's true, I like writing. So I joined it and I ended up loving it. And I took the class again, senior year.
So you're a senior. Lydia, what grade are you in?
I'm a senior too.
Okay, perfect. And so, I apologize. Did you say this was the first time you took the class, or you're taking it again?
This sophomore year is my first time taking
Okay,
the
right,
class, but now it's my second year time round taking the class. So yes.
And so do you want to tell me about what you wrote for this year's edition of Pantheon?
I wrote like a bunch of different things. She like put like a lot of my old and new poems in it, but so yeah, it's just like a mixture of sophomore and senior year. So like
Poetry or short stories? Or...
mostly poetry.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
I'm not really good at writing short stories. I'm more of a poet. So yeah.
Who was your favorite poet?
Maya Angelou.
Okay, perfect.
Audre Lorde. Yeah.
Lydia, I'm looking at you now. What did you write for the magazine?
I also had like 3 pieces in it. Yeah.
Also mostly poetry or more short stories?
Definitely poetry.
Okay, perfect. And who's your favorite poet then?
I was gonna agree with her. Maya Angelou's my favorite.
Pam, I'm gonna look at you. Who's your favorite poet? Just 'cause I've got you on
My
mic.
favorite poet is Billy Collins. I really like his work, but then I also like Edgar Allan Poe. I like
The
some of the
classics.
old school classics, absolutely.
And do you want to tell me a little bit? So, how much poetry is in the magazine compared to? Is it mostly poetry versus short stories?
Every year is different, but this year it's mostly poetry, and we have just this phenomenal variety of things turned in by the students, reflecting their personal experience. We have a poem by Muska Gorbandi, who is a immigrant from Afghanistan, and to hear her reflections on what's going on in her homeland, and as she's seen the changes and the things that have gone on politically, it's been a heartbreak for her. And to be able to express that in a poem has been fantastic. So we have poems like that. We have poems that reflect on what it was like to be a student during COVID. We have a wonderful poem that was turned in by Morgan that was inspired by a piece of artwork by Alex Beaujour. And to see that kind of ekphrastic poetry is just phenomenal.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. And actually, I'll keep talking to you for a moment. If you want to talk a little bit more about, what inspired you to start Pantheon in the first place.
Well, I was on the staff and an editor of the literary magazine at my high school, back at Alhambra High School. And when I became a teacher a short time after that, there was no literary magazine at Antioch High School. And so as I was going through the interview process to get the job, one of the questions was, what more could you offer as a teacher at our school besides just being a classroom teacher? And so I listed off a few things that I would be willing to do, and one of them was to start a literary magazine, and that's what I did, and we have been doing it ever since. And it's just been a real it's just an endeavor after my own heart. It's something that's really special to me, and I'm really glad that after all these years it's still happening.
So if I'm not mistaken, Antioch High is the only school in the local area that has a literary magazine. Is that correct?
I think you may be right. I don't think Deer Valley has one.
So Lydia and Morgan, you two are both seniors this year. You've both taken the creative writing class more than once now. Is that correct for you as well, Lydia?
No.
But this is my second time taking
perfect.
the class. Yes.
So looking ahead for you, is this something you want to continue to do, in college and maybe past colleges as well?
Yes. Not as like a career, but I feel like it's a good way to like express yourself in like a good pastime. But I love doing it though. But I just don't know if I would be like a good. I don't know if I could see it as like a job.
Right. No, for sure. I think
Yeah.
that's a great point. And just, having something that you like to do creatively, doing it as a job could potentially be
Yeah.
a source of burnout.
Yeah.
For sure. Lydia, is this something you're going to continue with as well?
Yes.
In what sense? As a job or as a passion?
I think both. I want my own poetry book one day.
Ooh, same.
And
I
how
can relate
long-
to that.
I should jump in really quick. So how long have you two been writing poetry for then? I didn't even think to ask before the program what you knew about creative writing.
Like I said, since sophomore year, because like I said, I always loved writing, but I never wrote poems.
Okay.
So yeah, it was definitely like a new outlet, but it's something that I love doing. So.
And so what made you make the jump, to poetry once so you're writing creatively, and what made you just that switch click in your brain that let's try poems?
Miss P, like she thinks she's a regular teacher, but like even just her, like, morning speeches, they're very, very inspiring. And she gives you so much freedom so you can write about anything that you want and she accepts you. So just to have that freedom in the classroom, something that I've never had before, it's just like, oh my God, like I really love this. So yeah, thank you, Miss P.
You're welcome. Boy, that was
I just like to
wonderful.
second that,
Thank you.
man. She's a good
Jeez.
teacher.
Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that, the morning speeches and just kind of the, the element of creativity in your classroom as far as that freedom Morgan was talking about?
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk when you're a teacher of creative writing, because creativity just doesn't happen on demand. You can't say, write about this, and you have until the end of the period. You'll end up looking at a piece of white paper and be, overwhelmed. So I try to give them direction, and if they have a particular direction they want to go, if there's something pressing, if there's just something that's in their chest that they just need to get out, then they should write about that, whether it's a poem or a story. But, you take a creative writing class to become a better writer. And so if I just say write whatever you want every day, there will be no improvement. So I try to give them different types of assignments, including modeling after famous poets. Just like Bob Ross on KQED, where you watch him paint and you do what he says to do and you follow his directions. Your artwork is going to look somewhat like his, but it's still going to be your own. So I do something similar. I will give them a poem by a famous poet or not so famous poet, and I'll give them some language frames, and then we'll try to model our own after that. And so it opens up new doors. It gives new possibilities for creativity, and the kids do a great job with those types of assignments.
No, it's terrific. I especially love the Bob Ross comparison there. I thought I was wearing my Bob Ross socks today, but not so
really?
much. But my calendar at work and everything is the same. But so they said something about your morning speeches. I'm curious, what that's all about.
Well, I just try to give them some affirmation that what they have to say is important. And it may not fit the assignment at the time, but if it needs to be said, it needs to be said, because writing is cathartic. It's a chance for you to get those words out on paper, to get things off your chest, but it also gives you an opportunity to rearrange your words and to edit yourself before you say things out loud, before you say something that you might wished you hadn't said.
Right. No, that's a great, yeah.
So it's not only creative, but it's cathartic and it's fun as well.
I like it a lot. Lydia, I'm going to turn to you and put you in the spotlight for a moment here because I haven't heard from you in a minute. Tell me a little bit about what's your favorite assignment what's your favorite thing that you've written in the class this year?
Probably the one that was published, called No Heart.
And what is No Heart about?
It's actually inspired by, it was an assignment, and it was inspired by, I don't know what book it was from, but a page of a book. And then we had to make a poem out of certain words, like just box around the words, make a poem. But I did it wrong. I thought it was just pick any random words and just incorporate them in your own poem. So that's what I did. And then it became something like really good. But it's about love and about like just how heartbreak feels, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think probably my favorite part of what you said was that, you thought you did it wrong, but you still ended up with something that was, and that's the cool thing about, a creative process like that is there is no wrong way to go about it necessarily. You know what I mean? Morgan, do you want to talk about one of your...
My favorite, it comes to mind while I was just thinking about it. It's like she said, how we modeled after certain poets. We modeled after Amanda Gorman's poem, Black Girls Pointillism. And so that was mine. So that's my favorite one.
That's terrific. This is a very poetry-heavy episode. I like it. I should ask, actually, I'm sorry I didn't get to this sooner. So how many students are in your class? How many creative writers do you have?
I only have about 20 students this year. So the fact that we came up with a literary magazine with such a small amount of students is pretty phenomenal and pretty amazing. And it was heavily reliant on my own students. We did have some from other classes, and we had a few students who turned in some work last year during the pandemic, and they turned it in through distance learning, and they didn't have an opportunity to be published. And so I kept their work and made sure to incorporate it into this year's magazine. So, but it's a small class right now, and that's a little bit unusual. I'm just glad to still have the class.
Right.
In these times, we lose a lot of electives, but I think now that we're back to school, we'll all be back full steam ahead.
And how large would you say the class typically is? Is it typically a class that you have a large demand for?
It all depends. We're usually in the high 20s.
Okay, and do you feel with a smaller class that you can give, that you can kind of nurture these students a little bit more than if you had a larger class potentially? Or does it not make much?
I actually prefer to have a little bit of a larger class because it gives you an opportunity for more feedback from more kids, You
Right.
can work in groups and you can share each other's work and give each other positive feedback, whereas when you have a smaller group, it might be less intimidating, but it's also at the same time more intimidating because you can't blend in,
Right, absolutely, yeah. So Lydia and Morgan, I don't want to, I want to make sure the other students get some time to talk as well. Was there anything else either of you wanted to share about your experience? What's, your favorite part of the class? What you hope to do in the future? Anything else we haven't touched on that you'd like to say?
That just poetry is very powerful. Thanks to her, thanks to Miss P introducing it to me, and it totally like took my life by storm and changed my life in the way I just express myself and the way I can now I actually like call myself a creative because just even hearing people saying that they like my poems, it means that because all my poems is like what goes on in my head. So
Right.
for somebody that can say that they like my poem means that you actually understand what I'm going through, even though I don't talk about it. And that's why poetry is so powerful, because you may not say it, but you can talk about it, and it can connect a whole room. It can connect a whole room full of people. So yeah, it's just I call it a blessing that I got introduced to it, because it just powerful, and it just allows me to express myself in the
Yeah,
way
just
I
a new
want
tool
to.
for self-expression. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. Lydia?
For me, writing has always been like an outlet because I started writing back in middle school, and I just mainly write about like what goes on in my life and like all of like the hardships that I went through, and it's very relatable to a lot of people. Like everybody goes through things that we don't talk about, but to be able to have that outlet, to be able to write it, and like Miss P's class, like she gives me tips all the times to make my writing better, and so that helps a lot. And just
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you being on here. As a treat for our listeners, would either of you like to recite your poems now?
Okay, so I will be reading one of my favorite poems that we did this year. It's called Small Worldview of Myself, and it's modeled after Amanda Gorman's poem, Black Daughter's Pointillism. I am a piece of work, a tired teenager with the desire to change the world, nonetheless a voiceless dreamer. The words burn. With the pen, I've been both vulnerable and the culprit. Don't they know I can turn heads when I walk into a room? Create magic with my pencil like it's my personal wand? My every breath sings a song of lullabies and war cries. I have been a shadow of my best self. She leaves me with nothing as she takes what's mine. Even in the quiet, I redeem myself like a guilty puppy. If I taste what I'm made of, it's hard like candy, rare like mountain water, and new beginning of leaders. They will know me and remember us, young envisioners who spoke up for what's right and survived a pandemic of inequality. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Morgan. That was Morgan reading her submission to the Pantheon magazine from Antioch High. We're going to listen to Lydia's submission as well now.
My piece was called No Heart. The heart had been ripped open, as if quickly slashed through with a knife, steady reminiscing about the pain of a past life. That heart had been beaten and bruised, yet still so generous and beautiful, belonging to a calm young soul that had promised to never fold. The truth, my heart blames you for the livid fear and ferocious things done to it, slowly breaking down like an avalanche or a summit. Learn that people don't want love, only lust, and just don't know how to trust. A heart that was once red isn't so red anymore. Been stomped on too many times and thrown on the floor, tangled up in the feeling of love, the kind that hits your core, the feeling of being alone when really it's all psychological. All of the glares and blank stares of my fellow peers as the tears slowly drain from my eyes, this fiendish expression or mentality of never being enough, needing others' love, trying to teach my mind how to stay positive, even though every minute, hour, and second of my existence was in jeopardy, erase the person in the mirror until there wasn't much left of me, my very noble and humanly soul in distress. If I had to guess, I said there's no soul left, no heart either, no one to be her healer is gone.
That was terrific. I thought that was incredible. The way you memorize it, too, I can barely memorize my phone number. So, everybody, that was Morgan, and that was Lydia reading some of their pieces from the Pantheon magazine at Antioch High. And I'm here now with three more students from Miss Weisgood's class. Do you guys want to each introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Stacey.
And I'm Colin.
And I'm Herminio.
Perfect. Actually, I should ask you what grades you're in as well.
I'm a junior.
Okay.
And I'm a junior as well.
I'm also a junior.
That works so well. Easy to remember. I like it. So a lot of the same questions I was just asking Lydia and Morgan. How did you get involved in the class? What made you interested in joining the creative writing class?
Well, in freshman year, I got interested in writing, and I found that I really liked it, and I found that I was kind of good at it. So when I saw it on the list of classes I could take, it was kind of just natural to take the creative writing class. So
For me, I wasn't in her creative writing class. I'm in her normal English CP class, and really, when we had to make short stories in sophomore year. I had a different teacher then, but that was when I kind of experimented with my writing skills, and I actually liked writing, but I didn't join because I wasn't sure if I would really want to continue to it. But now I am highly interested.
Perfect. Thank you.
To be honest with you, it's just because I needed help with better, like, when it comes to essays, I suck at them. So I just needed help, like, what to say, and I needed help with my reading more. So that's why I took this class. That's really it.
No, that's actually a really interesting
Yeah.
point of view. If I would actually like to hear more about that, if you don't mind. So how do you feel the creative writing has helped with your essay writing?
A lot better. I'm starting to make more sense, starting to do things by myself, not really asking for help. So,
No, perfect. I think
Yeah.
that's terrific. Now, Stacey, you said that you're in Miss Weisgood's regular English class as opposed to the creative writing class. So how did you end
Yes.
up, making that crossover, I guess?
It's just a normal where you move up and then you're into a new English class. And now she has a lot of different ways that we're writing, obviously practicing essays and then other. But right now we are about to start poems again for Black History Month, and we are gonna work more about poetry, which I'm excited because I want to see how much I can do more with my poems. I've been always interested on writing poetry ever since during middle school times, really. And now that like I have a teacher that can actually help out and understand with when fleshing out poems. I want that's how I got into this class
No, I
more.
think it's perfect. I think it's
Yeah.
terrific. And are you two? So Lydia and Morgan are poets as well. Colin, are you a poet?
No, I'm more of a story writer. I mean, I'll write poets or poems if Miss Weisgood would want me to, but I like stories more.
Who's your favorite author?
Author. That's funny. I don't read novels a whole lot, but I do have a lot of attention for Brandon Sanderson, and it's been so long since I've read her books. The author who wrote Hunger Games, one of my favorite book series. Read it twice or 3 times. I forgot how many times.
Okay, perfect. I think it's
Yeah.
great. And Herminio, did you want to talk about? So, are you more of a poetry guy? Or are you more of a short story guy?
Neither, I'm gonna be honest. I only go to school to learn and help mom family out whatever they need. That's really it. Nothing really.
Okay, perfect. So, but you did bring something to read for us today. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to tell me a little bit about it?
So it's about a Poet X. Basically, it's about a black girl that went to a white school. Now, racism is really bad. So they was jealous of her because she had like big breasts, big butt. So they made fun of her, but that wouldn't let her stop her. She likes writing, and she still acceded to her dream. So that all that trash talking really didn't stop her. So that's really what it's about.
And where'd you come up with the idea?
My nana helped me. We were just talking, so we wrote something about that. So
Okay, perfect. I think this would be a great time for you to read it. To be honest, Thanks
Okay.
for talking about it.
You thought you can get in my head that I would end up dead by the things you said, by the things you did? Nah, I got it together. Big ass, big tits, beautiful black and thick. I'm going to the top. Respect that. Be about that. See my face, grin, love me like twin. You take it low, I take the high. Now get up my face so I continue to fly. Mama, read me. Mama, see me. Try to understand me. Let me be, let twin who he may be. Don't judge him by who he may see. Your God has so many rules where your God read me, see me. I came out on top with the lines I slammed and the lines I dropped. All the things that's going on in my life, I never gave up the fight. When I went on stage and read my life, I slammed my words and I showed my fight. Now that I have been seen, you all know that I'm the queen, and that's my poem.
That's perfect. I love it.
I appreciate it.
What does it have a title?
Huh?
Does it have a title?
I suck at titles. I don't have
That's the
one
title
yet.
right there. I love it. But no, so that's great. So prior to taking this class, is that something you would have been able to write, before kind of opening up creatively in the class?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love it. And I'm going to turn over to you really quick and let you read your piece.
Okay. My piece is called A Daughter's Mind, and it's inspired by the same book that Herminio mentioned. It's by the poet X, and it's in the point of view of the main character, Ziomara, and this is about her relationship with her mother. When will it be till I can be set free, out of this place, out of this hell, free from this prison cell? Will I ever be released from her grasp? Because at this point, I feel like I might just collapse. I feel like I can't be myself, and I only get superficial help. So many questions that sometimes linger in my mind. I could care less now, but I wonder, why can't you accept me? Why do I have to be someone I'm not? I can feel you can't bear to look at me or believe I'm your child. You want me to be who you couldn't be so bad that you don't realize who I really am. Fuck you, Mom. That's my poem.
No, that's great. So would it be too personal to ask what inspired it?
Yes.
Okay, totally fine.
This piece is called The Prince's Entrance, and it starts with, the morning started with a cold sweat and shuddered breathing. I must have had a nightmare, one I can't remember. It didn't help when I saw the dog just staring at me. She was looking at something behind me, something I couldn't see. I groaned every time she barked and trotted across my room. I looked at the clock through my barely open eyes to see the red digits showing 6:02. Time to wake up anyways, I thought. I got out of my sheets, into the cold winter air, with this mastiff staring at me. I wasn't used to having her next to me all the time, but I'm also not used to living alone. Let's go potty then, Bo, I said. I walked her to my backyard, left the screen door open, and looked outside. The air had a blanket of fog hanging over it, making everything drip with dew. There was wind, but with no sound. And Bo even ran in after peeing, something unusual for such a playful dog. The hairs on my neck stood up with a fleeting memory of a face. A paranoia grabbed hold of me tightly after that. After she rushed in, I got my clothes and tried to go to the bathroom, all the while Bo was on my heels. When I walked into the bathroom, I was instantly hit with a smell of rotting meat, like a corpse was stuck in the walls. Bo smelled it too and refused to follow me. Instead, she laid down outside the door, looking intently at the other side of the hallway as I closed the door. While I was taking my clothes off, the cold sweat drenching my shirt and shorts reminded me of last night's nightmare. All I could remember was a warped face with a crown that made me cringe thinking about it. The face looked like someone dropped water on a painting, and it drowned out any details that could make it clear, smudging it. I shook my head and pushed it to the back of my mind and got behind the curtain. The warm water poured down my back. I felt the soothing warmth trickle down my spine. My eyes closed to embrace it, but the face flashed in my head, forcing my eyes open. The still black and white image lingered behind me now, making me scared enough to keep one eye open. And that's it.
That's a great cliffhanger. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna change the topic a little bit here. We're gonna change speeds here. So we've talked a little bit about the class, what inspired you to be in the class. Looking ahead, do either three of you see this being something you'll continue to pursue, and if so, in what capacity?
For me, I think it would be a good career choice to add to the lists, as I'm unsure of what I want to do career-wise, but I would want to be. I'm not really into arts, but when it comes to poetry or maybe photography, that's what interests me there. But it's more of how I'm leaning more, like career-wise, I would want to lean more with the human services or anything that can help out with people, as I love to interact. Um, yes, that's my take.
That's perfect. I love it.
Well, for me, not in the immediate future. I mean, hopefully that'd be the best case scenario. But I eventually want to become a novelist or someone writing longer stories. This is just a short piece made for the magazine, but I do like writing longer stories. But first, I do kind of want to go through some education, but still write. Yeah, eventually I do want to become a novelist.
I don't know yet.
No, hey, that's a totally fair answer.
I don't know what I want to be in life. Like I said, right now I'm just focused on helping my family out. Then we just take it from there and see.
I'm going to be 30 this year. I don't even know what I want to do in life. Just you have no rush. All right, guys. I've been saving the hardest question for the very end here. Are you ready for it? It's not that bad, don't worry. So, we've talked about the class. We've talked about futures. So, in what ways has this class helped you, not just creatively, but in terms of, Morgan had talked about how it's an avenue for expression for her and to help, it's just another tool for, being able to express herself. What have you three learned from this class that's not strictly academic in that same respect?
I have learned that it's okay to show yourself sometimes in when it comes to writing, of course, because it's always strictly this, you have to do this specifically just to earn a good grade. But then it would be sometimes where with Miss Weisgood, where I don't have to always overthink it. And it's a good way to like also relax and a way to cope with whatever someone is going through, and then we can like release it on paper, even though if it's not like something personal, even if it's just a normal school assignment. It's a good it feels relieving when you get to finish it, because you're like, wow, I finished that. And it's always a good reminder for me to breathe and take it one step at a time.
Or just that sense of catharsis and accomplishment.
Yes.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sure. Just
Yeah.
so, absolutely. So beyond just the academic and learning how to write better, what else have you learned from the class as far as that you can just carry into life in general?
What I learned from Miss Wisegood class is, like Stacey said, don't overthink things. But what I really learned from her class is like, don't be mad. How can I say this? To me, I just learned that, like I said, my reading got better, my writing got better, and all these big words that she be giving us and test on, I learned that too. So that's really
No, that's great. I think that's terrific. That's a great answer. Colin, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Well, for me, it's really helped my writing personally. In my sophomore year, when I did have her as a teacher, she would give us assignments with, well, she was more relaxed with the due times, but it did kind of push me to kind of be snappy with ideas and stuff like that. And I do appreciate that because I'm still pretty snappy with ideas. It's kind of easier for me today, just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff together and making it into one cohesive thing. I'm doing that with the story I'm doing right now, personally, my little project. Yeah, and it's going really well.
So how can you apply that snappiness to your life outside of school?
Outside school.
Have you found a correlation there?
Well, outside of school, yeah, my writing. That's really all I do. That's kind of my hobby outside of school. So, yeah.
Perfect. And then one last question for you three. And this is easier than that one. Don't worry, it's not nearly as existential. If someone wanted to get into creative writing, what piece of advice would you give them? Let's start with you and work this way.
okay. Do your work or just take school serious. That's really it. I don't have nothing else.
That's perfect.
Can I say two things? Just two quick things.
I'll allow it.
Okay. So the first thing is, don't be afraid for it to be bad. The first draft of anything is going to be bad when you write anything. That's going to happen. It's the nature of life. And the other thing is, I forgot the second thing. Okay, it left me. Okay, one thing. How about that?
Second thing is bring pen and paper to write it down.
Yeah.
I like it. Stacey?
For me, it would be don't be afraid to be vulnerable when it comes to writing. It's a good way to, you never know if you can find it a good way to release anything that you can't physically release to anyone, or you think you can't. And it'll be a good rewarding feeling once you get to see the work you did, and it's like what I said earlier. It's gonna be like, oh, I did that moment.
I think it's great. Perfect. Is there anything, I think we're at the end here. Is there anything else any of you guys wanted to say?
I remembered what I was gonna say.
There it is.
So the biggest thing is to explore. Writing could be a great outlet. Personally, there's a lot of things for me to personify in a way, right? If I'm angry at something, or I'm really happy about something, or if I'm missing something, if I want something, I can personify it into a character or a concept or a scene. There's always something. It's like painting, right? There's always something to paint that can relate to you, or write that can relate to you. Yeah, that's probably my biggest thing for anyone wanting to do creative writing.
All right. Hey, guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate having you on the episode today. So before we wrap up here, Pam, was there anything else that you wanted to share with us?
You had asked that last group if they had considered pursuing writing as a career, whether as a poet or a storyteller. And one of the things about high school that's so important is to give kids as many opportunities as possible to see what it is they do like, what it is they're good at. And by having something like the literary magazine or the poetry reading, they'll try their hand at that, and they might be really good at it. You just never know. You know, one of our Antioch High School graduates, Michael Semenik, I think he graduated in 1984. He took a stagecraft class just for the heck of it because he needed an elective in his schedule, and he learned something about the soundboards and ended up becoming a professional sound mixer, and he's gone on to receive 9 Academy Award nominations, and he won 2. So that was just by happenstance. So we need to provide as many opportunities as possible. Some of these kids that take creative writing just because they need an elective to fill their schedule, or they decide just for the heck of it to enter the poetry contest or the literary magazine, it could change the course of their life. It really could.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And if not, it was just a great memory of high school and they participated in something that was outside the norm. And I would say one more thing.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes poetry and creative writing is considered a non-essential class because it's not one of the required academic classes, but we are living in such a fractured world where ratings and algorithms dictate so much of what we see, and what we see is so often ugly and chaotic and without mercy. I really think that poetry, if we let it, can really lift us up and offer us a way to empathize with one another and help us realize that we're really not as different as we think. Despite our differences, we're not alone in our grief or our pain or our joy or our happiness. It's the greater good, and it brings us together. And in that respect, I think poetry and creative writing are really essential in high school courses.
I think that's perfect, and that's, clear that's the importance of Pantheon. So if I'm a listener, right now I've heard this, I'm dying to read the rest of Pantheon. Do I have to stop by Antioch High to grab a copy?
You would, but hopefully by the end of this year, we're working with the publications classes, and we might be able to get it up online so that people can access it through the Antioch High School portal, hopefully soon.
Is there something listeners can do to expedite that process, like to show some demand, or?
Well, that's always a great thing. If you just send a message to our principal and say, we're interested, put it out there, help us to locate this publication, we want to read it. We would appreciate that.
There you have it, everybody. If you want to read Pantheon, let them know. Pam, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. All right, and that does it for another episode of Clocked In with the Press. As always, I'm Jake Menez. You can find all our stories online at thepress.net or by downloading our free app. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn, and we'll see you again soon for another episode. Thanks, everybody.